It's the final match of the day here for APAC, at least, here in our second day of week 3 for this season of Grandmasters. We still, of course, have plenty of action to come from Europe and Americas thereafter. Some very, very exciting games that I was following along with yesterday, and I'm sure tomorrow will be no different across the regions. But for our final game of the day, Gia, it's going to be Alan once again after his victory over Bank Yugi. But I have to imagine, even though he's up against a mage again, it's going to be some very different Hearthstone muscles that are being exercised here in this particular matchup.
Absolutely. Where last series we saw Alan try and optimize value every single turn while also making sure to not take that much damage. I'm sure his focus will be much more on the latter half of that equation, not taking damage because he is up against Tempo Mage now, which can just have their power spike turns a lot earlier than Highlander Mage.
Yeah, I think that Alan has definitely had, even though he hasn't been up against the Tempo Mage yet, it's been a good recognition from him of how you are trying to approach the matchups anyway, just in terms of how he plays this priest deck very much for tempo, which I think is what you're trying to do against the mage. You want to proactively lock down the board, get the Vile Fiend in play, the Broomstick to get a lot of value. Kaj can be super impactful in the matchup as well. And thereafter, you are trying to get just lock down the board so no damage can come to face.
It is, however, worth noting that Alan and blitzchung did face off a while ago, if I recall.
Oh,
and
sorry.
blitzchung,
Yes,
yeah,
you're correct.
Got the upper hand in that matchup with some very, very timely draws. I will say, though, that the Shinvala was looking a lot less impactful than I thought it would be. I thought that's a card that you do generally want to have against Priest, but you're right in bringing up that a lot of the time the activators you want for Shinvala are the same cards you want to save for the Mana Cyclone turn. And when you're faced with those two options, more often than not, if you're only getting 1/5/5 off of Shinvala, mage players would rather have a bunch of generated cards to keep their value engine going.
That's the kicker for me. Again, as I've said before, and it's starting to sound like a boring record, that for me, it doesn't really matter what you're spending your mana on. As long as it's something and you keep doing it, that is what is important. I think that's what I hope to see from blitzchung, who I think had good understanding for the most part of how you're playing the early game, not playing too much for either tempo or card draw. And so I think it should be a very interesting back and forth series, no matter what.
Both of the players hitting some pretty good early cards. The studies for both of the classes available, and blitzchung has Astromancer Solarian to follow up. Whereas Alan has an early Zephyrus, which is always so impactful.
Oh, it says explode.
Yeah, I don't anticipate this. I was going to say I don't anticipate this to be a turn 2 Zephyrus. Now there's a 1/3 in play. Is it ever just backstab trade with the Zephyrus here to just lock down the board, as I was saying?
I think it's worth considering. But clearly, with the attack first, Alan is directing Zephyrus to give him wild growth, no room for doubt.
Interesting.
And that would allow him a lot more flexibility with possibly even the Ahmed coming down.
Yeah, it is nice. You know, you can go Ahmed, Draconic Studies, and then follow up with Wandmaker, the Dragon. Like, he is ramping up to stuff. It's just, I was kind of anticipating an alternate line he takes where he plays out the Wandmaker, plays out the Ahmed, saves the Zephyrus reactively. But as I was just saying beforehand, it's how Alan plays the matchup. He plays aggressively for tempo at all costs, getting proactively onto the board.
Well, I would say that the highest tempo play was Zephyrus Backstab, but I think this is a nice middle that he went for, which is Zephyrus to get the 3/2 body on board, which is very relevant against the 1/3 lab partner. And then you still have the wild growth to make sure that your follow-up play is strong. blitzchung with the Firebrand, of course, resting back to board control. And now Alan has to go a little bit back to the drawing board as to how he's getting the tempo back.
Evasive Worm, I think I like the look of here again. Let's clear up the board wherever possible.
Agreed. And I think Penance is happening on the Solarian. It's just a question of whether he wants to get the Wandmaker down immediately. The heal here is indicating to me that he wants to get the health on this with Ahmed, although not necessarily next turn, because we could see the Evasive instead.
I actually really like this. Like, a 2/7 on board is a huge deal to go for on the following turn. Mage, outside of Devolving Missiles, which is a one-of in blitzchung's deck, they really struggle to deal with that.
Indeed. And I like was smelling weakness there and trying to preemptively develop the Shenvala, and Alan is absolutely forced to answer that lest a bunch of 5/5s come down. But what a nice top deck as well.
Oh my god. So much happening in the span of about 10 seconds here from both of these players. I agree with your point as well. I think that for blitzchung, the Shenvala, you don't want to go too heavily all in on it, but in this opportunity, it had the chance to be absolutely insane on that previous turn. The really interesting thing here is heading into turn 7, I think he's considering cashing in his Thalnos now, deliberately killing it so Alan can't draw an extra card.
Off of Soul
With
Mirror,
Soul Mirror?
you mean?
Yeah.
That seems a bit niche. I think he was just considering whether he goes face with the 3/4 even. I think the trade is very reasonable there in case of Soul Mirror.
Fair enough.
Okay. Zephyrus for... Instead of give explosive shot here?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it would even offer. That's the best guess I think that I can offer as well.
Zephyrus doesn't recognize illusions, does it?
It does
So
not.
It will not be giving like an arcane explosion, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame Zephyrus for this one because I don't recognize illusions half the time either.
Okay. Chaos Nova definitely
Sure.
a reasonable guess that we should have known.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
yes, better just about. But the important thing now is blitzchung gets the turn. I will ignore all of the anti-synergy between Evocation and Cyclone that I talk about. This is the best draw in his deck by a country mile.
Indeed. Oh. I was expecting Frostbolt there, actually. Of course, it gives him one less mana to work with, but because of what you mentioned of anti-synergy with the Cyclone, I wonder if there was even room for some different ordering there.
Yeah.
In any case, Cram Session with Encanter's Flow seemed like it was supposed to happen.
Yeah,
Okay, he's still ending with Cyclone, then.
This is what I was talking about, that this is the inherent anti-synergy between Cyclone and the Evocation. There is no room to play all these spells, especially with triple Pyroblast that he got off of it, in order to get the Mana Cyclone down.
Yeah, it is very awkward.
Oh, but if he gets it down quick enough, he can get down the Giant on the same turn and develop the Evocation. But he missed it!
Oh, that is super rough. Not so much missing the Evocation, but missing the Giant is the really big one.
But even so, he went Font of Power into another Apprentice there to go off again with an Evocation next turn. And I mean, who knows? It's very possibly correct to save the Giant on that turn. Maybe it wasn't even a mistake, because now you can go Apprentice, Giant, Conjurer's Calling, Evocation, whatever you want, all on the same turn. It's going to go bananas.
That is very true. The fact that there is Conj to go along with that makes all the difference. And the Apprentice, the first one sticks, Derek.
Disgusting.
Nova?
Yeah, Studies or Nova, both good there. Steward, more value, sign me up.
Yeah, it's just looking like blitzchung's not even making this the Evocation turn. He absolutely doesn't have to. Okay.
Yeah.
Make room for the 3/3s.
Obviously, this is a little bit rough playing into exactly turn 9 with the Plague of Death, but from here on in, I think you have to make a powerful play to bait out the Plague of Death for it to do really much of anything.
Yeah, one point or another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for blitzchung now. Oh, second Giant pickup is enormous.
And
Conj again?
Oh my
Hello?
god! What? Blitzchung. Oh, unbelievable.
Okay. Well, those are among the worst outcomes. He actually just has less damage on board. But strangely enough, no Shadow or Death targets for Alan.
Yeah, the nuts.
Okay, more realistically, probably just an evasive turn or a Galakrond turn. Actually, better usage of mana, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Wretched Tutor to try and go for like Apotheosis Penance, but it's all very fancy to not really accomplish that much.
The problem is both the 3/6s. I don't see a way of dealing with both of them in one turn, which means a big conch target is going to remain. Yeah, Evasive Penance is just not clean, right? You're overkilling by 2.
Yeah.
So I think
Ugly.
Alan's first instinct of Galakrond makes no sense.
Great getting low.
One thing I don't want to see this turn is Wave of Apathy, because you are expecting Punch again, and a lot more damage coming down.
Okay, well, it's a lot of lifesteal on this turn, and means there's not that much threat on the other side, at least. But talk about pop-off turns now for blitzchung.
I thought this would be an apprentice. Oh my god, a Grom! Polly can deal with this 4/8 or even Frostbolt. It's Frostbolt, right? So you can ping the Grom this turn and just freeze the lifesteal.
That sounds nutty.
It just pushes so much damage.
Yep, it's a spell burst effect, so it doesn't have any other weird benefits. It's just a 4/8 with lifesteal. Good spot.
All of the options were tempting there, but I definitely like this line that puts Alan within lethal range next turn.
And it puts him in lethal range whether or not the minions are able to attack on the following turn. Evocation with Sorcerer's Apprentice for huge amounts of spells generated, fireballs, frostbolts. So many cards that can be used to get that little bit of extra damage.
Yep. Okay.
I wonder.
So he can start with Galakrond and you get 50-50 on a target that you really want to remove. Even the 3/4 is a decent target, you could make the argument, and can end with Shadow Word Death. Alternatively, he could develop this convincing Infiltrator and just death the Grom. And there's also a Wave of Apathy line. Wave plus Evasive Worm looks a bit tempting there. Just because, like, if blitzchung wanted to remove that untargetable minion, he would have to take a bunch of awkward trades.
I mean, I was looking heavily at Galakrond on that turn as well, just to try and snipe one of the good targets.
Well, blitzchung just needs to generate 9 damage here. 8 if you count the ping.
Yes, yeah, you just take a little bit of extra card draw and then see what happens.
Next turn.
Okay, next turn.
If there is a next turn. Alan hates to see it.
But
and you can't blame him. Ray of Frost. Power of Creation.
Double Conjurer's Calling? Yeah, okay, that's more than good enough right here. Whoa!
This looks like lights out for
Counterspell?
Alan.
Throw it in, why not? Just make it even harder for Alan to have any kind of an answer.
Yup. You can even fit the Vaporize, because... Or the lulls,
Just
I guess.
because, yeah. I really don't think it matters that much what he's doing with the rest of the cards in his hand.
Second Ray was questionable there, but yeah, I mean, he's in pretty much a near unlosable board state.
Yeah. That takes care of the counterspell, and then Galakrond has to snipe the Deathwing for there to be any chance at all. Is he still just dead?
From his perspective, if it does snipe Galakrond, then no.
Okay.
So 12 on board, 1 from the ping. Alan's at 16, so Solarian deals 4 to the face. That's it.
Go on, there's one way to start this turn, surely.
Yeah, with the minions attacking first, in case the Solarian ends up targeting them.
Correct. That's what I meant, obviously. I don't know what you're insinuating. Great first spell. We'll take that.
And that's
And that's it. Pretty brutal game. Again, it's got to be said for Alan. Wow, this Solarian was absolutely insane as well. But yeah, very tough couple of games that Alan has had at the hands of Mage, especially as that was what? A generated second apprentice into a generated second evocation to give him the extra reach that he needed.
when you put it that way, it does really kind of make you feel for Alan. But blitzchung set the blisteringly fast pace for that game, and he, despite us having some questions about how to optimize the Cyclone and Evocation turn, and maybe even a little bit of questions about the second Ray of Frost towards the end, it was very, very minimal things. And you could tell that blitzchung's macro game plan was always headed in one direction very consistently. Getting the Mana Giant with the Conjurers calling down, I think, was a very, very good spot that you and I, first glance, we wanted to put down the Mana Giant immediately, whereas it could have gotten punished.
Yeah, and I think that while Alan has a license to be kind of upset about what happened in some of the previous games up against his in his series against Bank Yugi, against Temper Mage, it's literally what the deck does. You can't be upset if they're generating extra spells, extra minions, any of that nonsense. It's the core of the deck, because at first glance, this deck should not be winning any games of Hearthstone. There's no burst damage in the deck. There's very little minion presence in the deck. It's just a load of old junk thrown in there. But it's when it all starts to come together and the combos become apparent that we realize the true power of the deck, which is generating a lot of help to get you over the finish line.
And we also realize why Derek loves this deck so much.
I love it. I'm a true degen. No shame about it.
All right. This game, the story could be very, very different, though. Alan now on the coin with 2 drops and 3 drop and Raised Dead. Very powerful curve, tempo-wise.
Yeah, greetings indeed. This is the turbo nuts, I think it's fair to say, for Alan. Only Zephyrus that you could possibly hope for to juice this up even more.
However, for blitzchung, it was also a pretty strong opener. Picked himself up an extra Astromancer Solarian. And because Alan is starting with a dormant minion, there's also some consideration for just tempoing out Apprentice.
I was thinking that. It's, what are the punishes in the deck? It's obviously Penance, and there's no Holy Smite, so there's not much at all that could punish it there, but I think the payoff is not quite worth it yet if it does stick. So I like holding off, even if it's a little bit lower on tempo.
That's fair. This turn, again, is another crossroads, because blitzchung, technically, his Firebrand is not dead to a 3-5 on board, assuming he takes this trade with the Solarian. And if it does stick, it's a huge payoff to get the Spell Burst effect. And even if it doesn't stick, it is soaking up damage more than likely from the Vile Fiend.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel that Arcane Intellect, unless you pick up immediate activations for the Apprentice, feels a bit too slow.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, there's the Apo off the top.
2 Appos. I think you're probably looking at Death instead, or Mystery Choice. Just because you want to have an answer to a Giant or a 5-5 off of Shenvala, would be my thinking.
I'm super tempted by second Apo, just because he's got 2 minions on board to blitzchung's none. And with Raised Dead, I feel like it's somewhat reasonable to land a target on this, but your line is probably much more reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, my thinking is literally just I want some reactivity. This hand is proactive, no end. Obviously, with Raised Dead, able to get you back more minions afterwards as well.
Also worth noting that when you are very ahead on board, the Apo for healing is not relevant whatsoever. It's more just to get stats.
Which is not bad. +2/+3 for 3 mana is really not awful.
Okay, for blitzchung, the firebrand has a decent chance of killing off this vile fiend, so starting with it, soften up that acolyte as well. But because this still has the spell burst on it, he really doesn't want to play either of these minions. And oh my gosh, he misses!
Neither of them were coming down.
Yikes. Isn't it just like Apo heal now? I mean, raise dead then Apo.
Yeah, if he goes raise dead now, he's guaranteed Sethek, so I like starting off with that first to get you a bit more generation.
Okay. Originally, I was looking at Apo on the 3-1 and heal that to take a value trade, but this means you get the Sethek on board and still very good trades.
It's like it's one of the lesser talked aspects of Cabal Cultist is it's a 2/6 with taunt for 4 mana. That's not bad. That's pretty decent in terms of fighting back against these small minion decks.
For sure. That is Bloodhoof Brave size.
Ooh, okay. We got another game with Potion of Madness available. Potion of Illusion, sorry.
Okay, and another cheap spell damage minion. I was looking at the lab partner there, not gonna lie, because of this Arcane Explosion. But he already had Thalnos, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's good recognition from blitzchung that he always has a very good radar as to when he's running out of value, when he needs to go for the high value options. It was Steward of Scrolls last game. It's the Explorer this game as well. I think it's good recognition of how he should not play too defensively and get some big threats available to come down.
As for the choice of Secret, my first instinct would also be leaning towards this counter spell because he's seen Apotheosis, so Spellbender may be a little bit less valuable. CS going into turn 6 is obviously not as juicy as into turn 7. But overall, I think you can be reasonably sure it'll have a target counter in the near future.
Okay, and while it was a snap decision there from Alan with the only real play I think he had available, it's still an apprentice that's stuck on the board here for blitzchung into a cram session, which can draw him 2 more cards to follow up as well.
It's huge. And yet again, we can see this Mana Giant, which is playable, but because there's the Conj alongside it, I'm much more tempted to hold on, especially going into turn 7. But blitzchung deviating this time?
Because he's got the counterspell. This is the kicker on this turn. Counterspell in play was what was... Even with that in play, he still didn't want to go with the Mana Giant there because he wanted to optimize the card draw. That was much closer for me on that turn, and I really wouldn't have begrudged him Mana Giant at all.
Well, I suppose the way it lines up is if it's just the one Mana Giant, you're more scared of Shadow Word Death or Time Rip than you are of Soul Mirror, which you can play a spell before either of those to proc counter spell.
It's very close in my opinion.
If he's saying this counter spell might not get procced on the next turn if I don't even put a big enough threat for Alan to warrant using a spell. Didn't quite work out that way, but he will still end up with the guaranteed giant conch if he wants it.
Yeah, exactly. Plenty of powerful plays here. I think you're starting off just with giant conch and then see what happens. Maybe you get some rushes, some charges, some taunts that will shape your decision making.
Sounds good to me.
Oh,
Sirach, ping your own face. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. I mean, unless you want to get down the Mana Giant, it's just good, right?
I thought so.
Yeah, I think so too.
More than removing a 1/2, I would like to have an
100%.
additional 6/6 on the board.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you there.
Okay. Still digging for answers is Alan. Low-key surprised that we didn't just see Time Rip Shadow Word Death this turn. But it could very well be that Alan just doesn't judge that good enough. He would have still taken a ton of damage from the smaller minions.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what he's building up to over the next few turns because, like, the bully has to die, right? Lest it summon a bunch of 3/3s every turn and just kill him. So he can just freeze the Zaraku and kill the bully?
Okay, now I was thinking that the turn was gonna be Death and Breath of the Infinite. But now that he's gone for Thought Steal, it really does seem like he's just building up for one big turn to clear everything. Probably trying to make use of the fact that blitzchung only has one board space at the moment.
It's definitely the plan. 3 burst damage is the best he can do, or obviously develop a minion from hand if he deems that more important. Just
And
ping
he has
himself in
picked
the
up
face.
this Prime to potentially be that wider board clear that he was looking for.
Ah, ping your own guy. Smart.
You gonna cry?
Well, I think we can quite clearly see what Alan was leading up to. He was trying to dig for some kind of an answer from his opponent's deck, and hypothetically, he has found that.
Hypothetic.
Greetings.
Usually, I'm told that prime time is one certain slot in the evening to get the most viewership, but here in Hearthstone Grandmasters, prime time is all the time.
Ooh, good way to start.
That one is too. Not quite that target. Oh.
It's close. It's oh so close, Gia, but I think at the same time, it's oh so far.
Blitzchung will have Flame Ward playing on his mind, so attack with the 6-3 is always happening first, and it is a clean GG there. Hands up for Blitzchung because he's making it to Sunday with a chance to pull himself into Division 8.
And as much as we love to watch Alan play today for the first time on broadcast in his Grandmasters career, the dream of Division 8 is sadly over for him. When we head into the round robin come next week, he is going to be down in Division B, I believe, unless some crazy maths come together, but I don't believe that is even possible at this point. I will say that blitzchung on that tempo mage, I think great understanding of the matchup, such a delicate balance between playing for tempo, getting his minions on the board, and also building up towards the combo, consistently picking the expensive spell damage minions off of Primordial Studies, consistently saving the giants to go with Conjurer's Calling, which is I think the big kicker to his game plan. And in the end, it's just way too much threat for Alan to have any kind of an answer for, with even with his removal-heavy priest deck.
It was just coming wave after wave of threats, and even though, let's say in the hypothetical world where that Prime did deal with the board, Blitzchung was sitting on Raz plus the Azure Explorer with more burst and more value generation in hand. He had the stuff to even go beyond if the Prime actually managed to sweep up the board. So that matchup did not look close whatsoever. However, we have to highlight how well Alan has been playing as well. In that series against Bank Yugi, I think playing that slower matchup really gave Alan the time to shine in those spots where it was niche interactions. It was trying to look for small optimizations with not very much time at all. Super impressed, and I look forward to watching his matches, even though they'll be in Division B.
Exactly. I think even though, in my opinion, Division B will be even tighter in terms of the skill level this season compared to last season, it was still I expect very good things from Alan. I think he'll be able to cope very well with the rest of the players in Division B and hold his own. But he is out of the story for the moment. Our main story is how is tomorrow going to shape out. So let's take a look at the bracket to see who is going to be representing themselves and their countries in the semi-final tomorrow. Chonsu Blitzchung as our first match, and then Dawn and Glory for our second semi-final match of the day.
No priest lineup to be seen because Chonsu and Dawn are both on the secret rogues. Blitzchung on that tempo mage, of course, we just saw, and Glory with the druid. Probably the most surprising archetype, for me at least, to see make it to top 4, but I'm still very happy that we have that diversity. To me, this is really a story of whether Chonsu and Dawn can take it all the way to the top, because that would prove that that practice group is one to watch out for in the coming weeks. Absolutely. Have Rivius there in mind as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a strong storyline that we see in APAC Grandmasters specifically, is the power of the practice groups when they're working together well and when they're innovating on new decks and existing decks. Because last season, that was undeniably the Japanese practice group in terms of the way they played Druid, their different lineups they were bringing, always feeling like they're just slightly ahead of the rest of the players in terms of meta development. Who knows? Maybe this time the Korean practice group have sorted their stuff out and will be the new big threat on the scene in terms of taking everyone else down. But it should be a lot of fun tomorrow, undeniably. A lot to play for all of these players, like Dawn, blitzchung in particular, I think, and Glory as well for that matter, trying to get right up to the top to guarantee themselves that spot in Division A, because especially for the players who didn't do so well last season, Dawn in particular, it would just be such a breath of relief to end up in Division A and be able to focus your sights on qualification through to the World Championships rather than avoiding relegation.
It is so true. And tomorrow, guys, it will be a little bit of a later start than usual because we only do have 3 matches to play out. And those will be best of 3s with no priest in sight. So I very much expect APAC to be over in the blink of an eye again. But that's not to say that we have any shortage of action, because while it's fast, it is completely jam-packed with cool deck decisions and some very dramatic Hearthstone, I have to say.
Yeah, I love all the different archetypes that we've got represented in the top 4 here now. Even Malagos Druid, despite its new weird form, I think is still a lot of fun to play and to watch Glory pilot. But that is us all done here in APAC for today. There is Europe and America still yet to follow, with plenty of action yet to come. So make sure that you stick around for both of those regions. But for myself, Geo Production, everyone here, thank you so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow for APAC. But for now, enjoy Europe, and we'll see you later.